The howling wind shook Taiwan's small research tent. Outside, the Arctic storm had grown worse over the past 3 hours. Snow piled high against the outer walls, and the temperature had dropped well below freezing. Even with his heater running at full power, he could see his breath in the air. Tae-Won checked his instruments again. This storm was unlike any he had recorded in his 2 years at the research station. The data would be valuable to his climate study, but right now he just hoped his equipment would survive the night. He poured himself a cup of hot tea and wrapped his fingers around it, savoring the warmth. The radio crackled with static. His weekly check-in with base camp wasn't due for another 2 days, but in this weather, he wouldn't be surprised if communications went down completely. A strange sound caught his attention, something different from the constant howl of the wind. He paused, listening carefully. There it was again, a dull thump against the outer wall of his tent. Probably just ice falling. He muttered to himself, but his instincts told him to check. He pulled on his heavy coat and boots, grabbed his flashlight, and pushed open the tent flap. The wind nearly knocked him off his feet as snow whipped into his face. He raised the light, sweeping it across the perimeter of his camp. At first, he saw nothing unusual, just endless white. Then his light caught something by the weather station. A dark shape lay half buried in the snow. Tae-Won squinted against the blizzard. It looked almost like a person. His heart racing, he trudged through knee-deep snow toward the shape. As he got closer, he could make out what appeared to be a humanoid figure. Had another researcher gotten lost in the storm? But that was impossible. The nearest camp was over 30 miles away. Kneeling beside the figure, Tae-Won brushed away snow to reveal what lay beneath. His hand froze mid-motion. This was not human. The being had a woman's form, but her skin was a pale blue that seemed to shimmer in the beam of his flashlight. Where a human would have hair, she had what looked like crystalline strands that caught the light and reflected it in tiny rainbows. Her face was oddly beautiful, with features that seemed both familiar and alien at the same time. "What the hell?" Tae-Won whispered, his words lost in the wind. The figure didn't move. Her eyes remained closed, and Tae-Won couldn't tell if she was breathing. He reached out hesitantly and touched her arm. It was ice cold, colder than should be possible for any living thing. Scientific curiosity battled with fear in his mind. What was she? Where had she come from? Should he even be touching her? Then his training kicked in. Whatever she was clearly in danger in this cold. He could see frost forming on her crystalline hair and blue skin. If she was alive, she wouldn't be for long in these conditions. Tae-Won made his decision. He slid his arms underneath her and lifted. She was surprisingly light, almost like she was hollow inside. Her body was rigid and cold against his chest as he struggled back toward his tent, fighting against the wind with each step. Once inside, he laid her carefully on his cot. In the better light, he could see more details of her strange appearance. Her clothes were like nothing he had ever seen, a shimmering material that seemed to change color slightly as he moved. Around her neck was what looked like a device of some kind, with small lights that blinked weakly. "Are you alive?" he asked, though he didn't expect an answer. Tae-Won's scientific mind began cataloging observations. Her chest moved slightly. She was breathing, but very slowly. Her skin remained that strange blue color, but with faint patterns visible beneath the surface, like circuits or veins. And despite the alienness of her appearance, there was something undeniably female about her form. He needed to warm her up. That much seemed obvious, regardless of what species she might be. Tae-Won turned up his heater and placed extra blankets over her still form. He hesitated, then added his emergency thermal blanket as well. Hours passed. Tae-Won sat across from his strange guest, alternating between watching her for any sign of movement and writing frantic notes in his journal. The storm outside continued to rage. "This changes everything," he whispered to himself. "Everything we thought we knew about life in the universe." Around midnight, he noticed a change. The alien woman's breathing had become more regular. The frost that had coated her crystalline hair had melted away, leaving the strands shimmering in the dim light of his tent. Tae-Won leaned forward, watching closely. Her eyelids fluttered. Then they opened. Tae-Won gasped. Her eyes had no pupils or irises, just solid pools of deep purple that seemed to glow from within. Those strange eyes fixed on him, and he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Arctic cold. She sat up suddenly, the blankets falling away. A sound came from her, not words, but a series of musical tones unlike anything Tae-Won had ever heard. He raised his hand slowly, trying to appear non-threatening. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe here." The alien woman tilted her head, studying him with those glowing purple eyes. She reached out one blue hand toward him, then drew it back as if afraid. Tae-Won pointed to himself. "Tae-Won," he said clearly. She seemed to understand the gesture. She pointed at herself and made a sound that was like bells chiming. "Nari." "Nari," Tae-Won repeated, feeling a smile spread across his face despite his fear and confusion. She nodded, and the smallest hint of a smile curved her blue lips. Outside, the storm howled on, but inside the small tent, two beings from different worlds had made first contact. Tae-Won didn't know what would happen next, but he knew his life would never be the same again. Morning light filtered through the tent's fabric, casting a soft glow over the unusual scene inside. Tae-Won woke with a start, momentarily forgetting the events of the previous night. When his eyes landed on the blue-skinned figures sitting cross-legged on his cot, he remembered everything. Nari was awake, examining a compass with intense curiosity. Her crystalline hair caught the light, sending tiny rainbows dancing across the tent walls. When she noticed Tae-Won watching her, she made that bell-like sound again and held up the compass. "That's a compass," Tae-Won said, pointing to it. "Compass." Nari tilted her head and attempted to repeat the word, but what came out was a musical tone nothing like human speech. She seemed to realize this and frowned, her features shifting in a way that somehow conveyed frustration despite their alien nature. Tae-Won's stomach rumbled. "I need to eat," he said, mostly to himself. "And you probably do too." He moved to his small camp stove and began preparing a simple breakfast of oatmeal. Nari watched every movement with fascination, her purple eyes following his hands. When the food was ready, Tae-Won offered her a bowl. Nari sniffed it cautiously, then dipped one long, blue finger into the oatmeal. She touched it to her lips and immediately made a series of high-pitched tones that Tae-Won somehow knew meant displeasure. "Not a fan of oatmeal. Can't blame you," he said with a small laugh. He tried offering her other items from his supplies: dried fruit, energy bars, even his precious chocolate stash. She refused them all, but seemed interested in his water bottle. When he handed it to her, she examined it carefully before drinking. Her expression brightened, and she made a pleasant chiming sound. "At least we agree on water," Tae-Won said. After breakfast, he noticed Nari shivering slightly. The tent was warm by Arctic standards, but perhaps not warm enough for her. He offered her one of his spare thermal shirts, demonstrating how to put it on by pointing to his own clothes, then to her. Nari seemed to understand. She pulled the shirt over her strange, iridescent clothing. The simple act of kindness seemed to touch her. She placed her hand over her chest and bowed her head slightly toward him. "You're welcome," Tae-Won said, mimicking her gesture. Communication remained their biggest challenge. Tae-Won tried speaking slowly, using simple words and lots of gestures, but Nari's vocal apparatus clearly wasn't built for human speech. Instead, they began developing a system of drawn symbols and pantomime. Tae-Won handed her his notebook and pen. At first, Nari just examined the items, running her fingers over the paper with wonder. Then she began to draw. Her first sketch was of herself, then of a vessel that looked nothing like any aircraft Tae-Won had ever seen. She drew it above a landscape that resembled the Arctic terrain. then added jagged lines to show it crashing. "Your ship crashed," Tadwan said, pointing to the drawing. Neri nodded vigorously, then pointed outside the tent. "It's nearby. You want to go to it." The storm had died down overnight. Though the wind was still biting cold, visibility had improved. Taiwan helped Neri bundle up in some of his spare cold weather gear, which looked comically large on her slender frame. The thermal readings on his equipment showed the temperature at -30 degrees Celsius, dangerously cold for a human, and apparently for Neri too, despite her obvious adaptation to cooler environments. They trudged through the snow for about 2 miles, following Neri's lead. She seemed to have some way of navigating that didn't rely on visible landmarks, occasionally stopping to tilt her head as if listening to a distant signal. Finally, they crested a small ridge, and Tadwan saw it. Half buried in snow was a craft unlike anything he had ever seen. It was roughly oval in shape, with a smooth metallic surface that shimmered with an inner light, similar to Neri's skin. One side was clearly damaged, with what looked like burn marks scarring the otherwise perfect surface. "That's your ship," Tadwan breathed, his words creating clouds in the frigid air. Neri made a sad chiming sound. She led him closer, then placed her hand on a section of the hull. A panel slid open, revealing a space just large enough for them to crawl through. Inside, the ship was dark except for a few blinking lights on what must have been a control panel. The space was small but elegant, with curves and flowing lines instead of the hard angles Taiwan associated with human technology. But much of it was damaged. Crystals that seemed to be part of the ship's systems were cracked or shattered entirely. Neri moved to the control panel and pressed a sequence of symbols. A holographic display flickered to life, showing what Taiwan recognized as star charts, though the constellations were arranged differently than he had ever seen them. She pointed to one particular star, then to herself. "That's your home?" Tadwan asked. Neri nodded, then made a sweeping gesture that encompassed the ship and the surrounding area. She pointed to her eyes, then to the earth beneath them. "You came to observe us, to study Earth." She nodded again, then made a gesture like she was sampling or collecting something. Back at the tent, they continued their crude attempts at communication. Through a combination of drawings and gestures, Taiwan began to understand that Neri's people were searching for worlds similar to their own. Worlds with cold environments, but rich in some resource Taiwan couldn't quite identify from her drawings. He also learned that she was alone on this mission, and that no rescue would be coming soon. Her people didn't know exactly where she was, and her ship's communication system was damaged in the crash. As night fell again, Taiwan found himself sitting across from Neri, sharing his camp heater's warmth. Despite the immense differences between them, he felt a growing connection to this strange visitor from the stars. She had trusted him with her life when she was vulnerable, and now he was her only connection to survival on this harsh world. Neri caught him watching her and made a soft, questioning sound. Taiwan smiled, and on impulse, reached out his hand palm up on the small table between them, a universal gesture of friendship. After a moment's hesitation, Neri placed her blue hand in his. Her skin was cool to the touch and had a faint texture like fine silk. The contact seemed to create a moment of perfect understanding between them that transcended their communication barriers. They would find a way to understand each other, Taiwan thought. They had to. A week passed in the Arctic Research Station. The days fell into a rhythm as Taiwan and Neri worked to understand each other. Their communication system grew more complex with each passing day. They created a small dictionary of drawn symbols on the walls of the tent, each representing basic needs and objects. Taiwan pointed to the water jug. "Water," he said aloud while touching the symbol they had drawn for it. Neri made her musical sound for the same concept and touched the symbol too. Small victories like this made Taiwan feel less alone in the vast Arctic wilderness. On the 8th day after finding Neri, something changed. They sat across from each other at the small folding table, reviewing their growing collection of shared symbols. Taiwan was trying to explain the concept of tomorrow when Neri suddenly went very still. Her purple eyes seemed to glow more intensely, and she raised her blue hands to her temples. "Are you okay?" Taiwan asked, concerned. Neri closed her eyes and made a soft humming sound. Then she reached across the table and gently placed her cool fingers against Taiwan's forehead. The touch was light, but the effect was immediate and overwhelming. Taiwan gasped as a flood of images rushed into his mind. He saw flashes of strange landscapes, crystal forests under a pale sun, cities built into the sides of mountains with structures that seemed to grow naturally from the rock. He felt emotions that weren't his own: wonder, sadness, urgency. Then it was over. Neri withdrew her hand, and Taiwan slumped back in his chair, breathing heavily. "What was that?" he whispered. Neri touched her head, then his, then made a connecting gesture between them. You can communicate telepathically." She nodded, her expression hopeful yet tired. She swayed slightly in her chair. "It takes a lot out of you," Taiwan guessed, and she nodded again. That night, Taiwan couldn't sleep. His mind kept returning to the images he had seen, glimpses of a world he could barely comprehend. Was that Neri's home? He had so many questions, but he understood that whatever she had done had drained her energy. She was now sleeping soundly on his cot, while he sat wrapped in blankets, watching the northern lights dance through the small window of his tent. The next morning, Neri seemed stronger. After they ate, Taiwan had discovered she could digest certain types of his seaweed snacks. She touched her temples again, looking at him questioningly. "You want to try again?" Taiwan asked. When she nodded, he took a deep breath. "Okay." This time, when her fingers touched his forehead, the connection was clearer. Instead of random flashes, he saw more coherent images, as if Neri was intentionally showing him specific memories. He saw her world, a planet with 2 moons, covered largely in ice and crystal formations. Beautiful but harsh. He saw her people, beings similar to Neri, with blue skin and crystalline hair, living in harmony with their frozen environment. Then the images turned darker. He watched as their sun began to change, growing weaker. The already cold planet became colder. Ice spread, but not the kind her people thrived in. This was different, hostile somehow. Plants died. Resources dwindled. Her people gathered in great councils, projecting images between them without speaking. Taiwan understood with sudden clarity. Neri's people were facing extinction. Their world was dying, and they were looking for another place to live, or at least resources to save their current home. The connection broke, and Taiwan found tears freezing on his cheeks. Neri looked at him with an expression of deep sadness. "I understand," he said softly. "You came here looking for a new home." Over the next few days, their telepathic sessions grew longer and clearer. Taiwan learned that Neri was what her people called a seeker, a scout sent to explore potentially habitable worlds. She had been drawn to Earth's polar regions because they most closely resembled her home environment. Her ship had malfunctioned upon entering Earth's atmosphere, causing the crash. The damage was beyond her ability to repair alone, and the emergency beacon was working but very weak. Help might come eventually, but it could take years. With each session, the connection between them strengthened. Sometimes now, Taiwan would catch glimpses of her thoughts without physical contact, just brief impressions when they were near each other. He sensed her growing comfort with him, but also her deep homesickness and worry for her people. During one particularly strong connection, Taiwan showed Neri his own memories. Growing up in a small coastal town, his love of science that led him to this isolated research post, the beauty he found in Earth's most extreme environments. "Your world is so full of life, so warm," she communicated to him through their mental link. "My people would find most of it uninhabitable. But these polar regions, they could be adapted. What would happen to the existing life here?" Taiwan asked, suddenly concerned. Neri showed him images of coexistence, of her people living in harmony with Earth's polar ecosystems, even helping to preserve them against the warming climate Taiwan had been studying. "You understand much of your planet is changing," she conveyed. "The ice is retreating. We could help stabilize these regions, using our technology to maintain the balance." It was a beautiful vision, but Taiwan sensed something held back, something Neri wasn't showing him. That night, as a particularly fierce storm howled outside, Taiwan awoke to find Neri sitting by the window, her blue skin reflecting the moonlight that filtered through breaks in the clouds. "Can't sleep?" he asked. She turned to him, and without touching, he felt her sadness wash over him. "What's wrong?" he asked, moving to sit beside her. Neri hesitated, then placed her hand on his. The connection formed immediately. "There is more I haven't shown you." Her thoughts came clearly now. "My people are divided. Some believe we should seek cooperation with species like yours. Others believe we should take what we need, regardless of the consequences to native life." Images flashed in Taiwan's mind, conflicts among her kind, passionate debates, two distinct philosophies emerging. "Which side are you on?" he asked silently through their connection. "I was sent by those who seek cooperation," she responded. "But if the others find this place first?" Taiwan understood her fear now. She wasn't just stranded, she was racing against time. If the wrong faction of her people found Earth first, the consequences could be devastating. As the storm raged outside, Taiwan made a decision. "I'll help you," he promised. "Whatever you need to contact your people, the right people, I'll help you find it." Gratitude flowed through their connection, warm and bright against the cold night. In that moment, their minds touched more deeply than ever before, and Taiwan glimpsed something unexpected in Neri's consciousness, a growing affection for him that mirrored his own feelings for her. They sat together by the window until dawn, watching the storm gradually fade, their minds quietly linked, sharing thoughts and feelings that transcended the need for words. 2 weeks after the crash, Taiwan noticed something unusual about Neri. When they spoke telepathically about topics that moved her emotionally, her blue skin began to emit a soft, pulsing glow. It started as a faint shimmer across her cheeks, then gradually spread until her entire body radiated gentle light, like moonlight on ice. The first time it happened was when they discussed her family. Through their mental connection, she showed him memories of her equivalent of parents, tall, elegant beings who had nurtured her from childhood. The images were tinged with sadness. She hadn't known if she would ever see them again when she volunteered for this mission. "You miss them very much," Taiwan observed, watching in fascination as the glow spread across her skin. Neri nodded, seemingly unaware of the change in her appearance. When Taiwan pointed it out, she touched her own arm in surprise. "Is this normal for your people?" he asked. Through their connection, she explained that it was a physical manifestation of strong emotion. As her body recovered from the crash trauma, more of her natural biological functions were returning. The glow was a good sign. One morning, Taiwan woke shivering. The heater had failed overnight, and the temperature in the tent had dropped dangerously low. He could see his breath hanging in the air as he fumbled for the backup system. "Power cells drained," he muttered, checking the equipment. "Must have overworked it during the last storm." Neri sat up on her cot, instantly alert to the danger. The temperature outside was -40 degrees, and without heat, the inside of the tent would quickly become life-threatening, even for her. "We need to get to the emergency shelter," Taiwan explained, pointing to the map where he had marked a small structure about a mile away. It was stocked with supplies and had its own power system. They dressed quickly in the heaviest cold weather gear Taiwan had. Even with layers of thermal clothing, the cold bit into his skin as they stepped outside. The wind had picked up, driving sharp crystals of ice against their faces. "Stay close," Taiwan shouted over the wind, securing a rope between them. "If visibility drops, we don't want to get separated." They moved slowly through the deep snow, Taiwan checked his compass frequently, struggling to maintain their direction in the swirling white landscape. After 20 minutes, his fingers and toes had gone numb despite his insulated gloves and boots. His thoughts began to grow sluggish, the first warning sign of hypothermia. Nari noticed his stumbling steps. She stopped, turning to face him. Through their telepathic link, he felt her alarm at his condition. Without hesitation, she pulled off her glove and placed her bare blue hand against his chest, directly over his heart. "What are you doing?" Taiwan gasped, concerned she would freeze her exposed skin. But Nari's hand began to glow, brighter than he had ever seen before. The light pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and warmth spread from the point of contact throughout his entire body. It wasn't just heat, it felt like energy itself flowing into him, racing through his veins and settling into his cells. For a moment, Taiwan couldn't breathe, couldn't think, his vision filled with brilliant blue light. Then, just as suddenly, it was over. Nari withdrew her hand, swaying slightly from the effort. She quickly put her glove back on and gestured for them to continue. Taiwan took a step forward, then stopped in amazement. The cold was still there. He could feel it objectively, but it no longer bothered him. His fingers tingled with renewed circulation, and his mind was sharp and clear again. Even his vision seemed enhanced. He could make out details in the blowing snow that had been invisible before. "What did you do to me?" he asked, his voice full of wonder. Through their mental connection, Nari explained as they continued walking. What she had shared was something her people called life binding, a gift usually reserved for family members or life partners. She had transferred a small part of her own genetic adaptability to him, allowing his human physiology to better withstand the cold. They'd reached the emergency shelter without further incident. Once inside, with the backup heater running, Taiwan examined himself in the small mirror on the wall. His appearance hadn't changed, but he felt profoundly different. Colors seemed more vivid, sounds clearer. When he removed his heavy jacket, he felt comfortable in a temperature that would have had him shivering violently before. "Will this fade?" he asked Nari as they sat warming themselves by the heater. She shook her head. Through their connection, she explained that the changes were permanent. His cells had been fundamentally altered to incorporate aspects of her biology. It wouldn't make him immortal or give him all her abilities, but his resilience to cold and his sensory perception would remain enhanced. "Why did you do this for me?" Taiwan asked. Nari's skin began to glow softly again. Through their link, he felt a complex mix of emotions: gratitude for his help, concern for his safety, and something deeper that made his heart beat faster. "It was the only way I could think to protect you." Her thoughts came to him. "You saved my life. Now I have helped safeguard yours." But there was more to it than that, and they both knew it. The gift she had given was intimate, a sharing of her very essence with him. Among her people, such a bond was not undertaken lightly. That night, as they sat in the small emergency shelter listening to the wind outside, Taiwan realized he could sense Nari's presence in his mind even without physical contact. Their telepathic connection had strengthened, perhaps as a side effect of the life binding. "There's something else you're not telling me about what you did," he said quietly. Nari looked at him, her purple eyes luminous in the dimly lit shelter. Slowly, she nodded. Through their connection, she revealed the final truth of her gift. The life binding had created a permanent link between them. Even if they were separated by great distances, they would always be able to sense each other. More significantly, if her people came to Earth, they would recognize the mark of her gift on him. He would be seen as someone chosen by one of their own, a bridge between their species. "You've made me an ambassador," Taiwan realized. More than that, her thoughts whispered in his mind. "I've made you family." The implications were enormous. Taiwan had been changed, not just physically but diplomatically. He now carried within him proof of Nari's trust, and a potential voice in the future of relations between their peoples. As they sat together in the quiet shelter, Taiwan felt the weight of this new responsibility. But he also felt something else, a profound connection to the blue-skinned woman beside him, a bond that transcended their different origins. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Outside, the Arctic night wrapped around the small shelter, stars glittering in the clear sky above. Inside, two beings from different worlds shared a moment of perfect understanding, their futures now intertwined in ways neither could have imagined. The day began like any other in the past month. Taiwan woke early, no longer needing the heavy blankets that had once been essential in the Arctic cold. He stepped outside the shelter, breathing in the crisp morning air that now felt refreshing, rather than painful against his lungs. Nari joined him moments later. Her recovery was complete now. Her blue skin glowed with health, and her crystalline hair shimmered in the pale sunlight. Through their mental link, Taiwan sensed her contentment mixed with a growing anticipation. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked. "Something's different today." Neri nodded, pointing to the sky. She didn't need to use telepathy to communicate her meaning. They both knew what was coming. They had repaired her emergency beacon 3 days ago, boosting its signal strength using parts from Taiwan's research equipment. If all went well, her people would have picked up the signal and calculated her location by now. "How much longer do you think?" Taiwan asked, scanning the clear blue sky. In his mind, he heard her response. "Soon. Today, perhaps." They spent the morning as they usually did, checking equipment, sharing meals, and working on their growing dictionary of shared concepts and symbols. Taiwan had contacted his research base a week ago with a carefully worded message about finding unexpected specimens that required his continued presence at the remote station. His supervisors hadn't questioned it. Researchers were often granted autonomy in the field. Around midday, Nari suddenly froze. Her head tilted as if listening to a distant sound, and her purple eyes widened. "They're coming," she said in his mind, her excitement pulsing through their connection. Taiwan felt his heart rate increase. Despite all they had discussed, all they had planned, the reality of alien contact hit him anew. In a few hours, he would be face to face with more beings like Nari. Earth's first official extraterrestrial contact was about to happen, and he alone would witness it. "What should I do?" he asked, fighting the urge to pace nervously around the small shelter. "Be yourself," Nari replied simply. "They will sense our connection. That will help." They gathered at the original crash site, bringing only what they could easily carry. Taiwan had packed a small bag with personal items, research notes, and a few mementos from Earth. The rest of his equipment would stay behind, with an automated message programmed to explain his absence as a medical evacuation. The sky was clear as they waited, the sun beginning its slow descent toward the horizon. Then Taiwan saw it, a shimmer in the air, like heat rising from the snow. But this was no natural phenomenon. The shimmer grew, taking shape as a vessel appeared. It was larger than Nari's scout ship, but with the same elegant design, its surface reflecting the snow and sky until it was fully visible. The ship hovered silently above the ground, not disturbing even a single snowflake beneath it. A panel slid open on its underside, and a beam of soft light extended down to the snow. "This is how we enter," Nari explained, taking Taiwan's hand. He hesitated only briefly before stepping forward with her. The moment they entered the light, Taiwan felt a gentle upward pull. They rose slowly into the ship, the ground falling away beneath them. Inside, 3 beings awaited them. They resembled Nari, with the same blue skin and crystalline hair, though each had subtle variations in height and features. They wore fitted garments that seemed to flow like liquid over their forms. "My search team," Nari explained mentally to Taiwan. "Jun, Dai, and Mina." The 3 aliens regarded Taiwan with open curiosity. He felt a light touch against his mind. Not invasive like his initial connections with Nari had been, but questioning, seeking permission. "They wish to communicate with you," Nari told him. "Is that acceptable?" Taiwan nodded. Yes. The mental touch strengthened, and suddenly he could sense all three of them. Unlike with Nari, there were no clear words or images, just impressions, surprise, interest, and a hint of concern. The tallest of the three, Jun, stepped forward. Through the mental link, Taiwan understood his question. You are bound to Nari. Yes, Taiwan replied, both aloud and mentally. She saved my life and shared her gift with me. Jun turned to Nari, and Taiwan sensed a rapid exchange between them. Too quick for him to follow completely, but he caught fragments. Unauthorized. Counsel. Consequences. Nari's response was firm. Images flashed in Taiwan's mind of his rescue of her, their weeks of learning to communicate, the growing trust between them. Then, more significantly, visions of potential cooperation between their species, with Taiwan serving as a bridge. The three aliens conferred among themselves. Taiwan waited, aware that this moment might determine not just his fate, but potentially that of human-alien relations for generations to come. Finally, Minna, the smallest of the three, approached him. She carried what looked like a crystal tablet. Through their mental connection, she asked permission to scan him. She needs to document the biological changes, Nari explained. For the council, Taiwan nodded his consent. Minna held the crystal device near him, moving it slowly from his head to his feet. It emitted a soft humming sound and glowed briefly. When she finished, she showed the results to the others. Their reaction was immediate, a mixture of surprise and what Taiwan could only interpret as respect. What is it? He asked Nari. The binding took more completely than is usual, she explained. You have adapted remarkably well to the genetic material I shared. This suggests our species are more compatible than we had theorized. Day, who had remained silent until now, moved forward. Through the mental link, he addressed Taiwan directly. The council must be informed of these developments. Will you come with us to speak to them? The question wasn't entirely unexpected. Taiwan and Nari had discussed this possibility during their weeks together. Still, the reality of leaving Earth, perhaps for an extended period, made him pause. If I go with you, he asked, will I be able to return? The three aliens exchanged glances. It was Jun who answered. That would be for the council to decide. But your genetic adaptations would allow you to survive on our world, and Nari's binding provides you certain protections under our laws. Taiwan looked at Nari. Through their private mental connection, he asked, what do you think I should do? Her response came with warmth and certainty. Come with us. Be the voice for your people. Help us find a way forward together. Taiwan took a deep breath. The enormity of the decision weighed on him, leaving behind everything he knew, venturing to a world light years away. Yet the alternative seemed equally impossible. Letting Nari go, never knowing if her faction's peaceful intentions would prevail, allowing this historic opportunity for contact to slip away. I'll come, he said finally. I'll speak to your council. Relief and joy flowed from Nari through their bond. The other three aliens made a gesture, touching their fingertips to their foreheads in what Taiwan understood to be acknowledgement of a significant decision. As the ship prepared for departure, Taiwan moved to a window panel. Below, the Arctic landscape stretched out, pristine and vast. This had been his home for 2 years, a remote outpost where he had expected only solitude and scientific data. Instead, it had become the site of humanity's first step toward the stars. Nari joined him at the window. Are you afraid? She asked mentally. Yes, he admitted, but also excited. Your world is beautiful, she said, looking down at the ice and snow. We will protect it, I promise. The ship hummed softly as its systems engaged. Taiwan felt a slight shift as they began to rise. The ground fell away quickly, the research station becoming a tiny dot, then disappearing altogether as clouds enveloped them. Within minutes, they had left Earth's atmosphere. Through the window, Taiwan watched his blue planet grow smaller, a perfect sphere against the blackness of space. Will they listen to me? He asked Neri. Your counsel. They will, she assured him. The binding between us ensures that. And when they see how our biologies can complement each other, they will understand the potential for true alliance rather than mere survival. As Earth vanished from view and the ship accelerated toward the distant stars, Ta-1 felt both the weight and the wonder of his new role. He was no longer just a researcher, but a representative of his entire species, carrying humanity's hopes for peaceful contact with an advanced civilization. Whatever lay ahead, on Neri's world and beyond, they would face it together, two beings from different stars whose paths had crossed in the most unlikely of places. The journey had just begun. Retriclade can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.